Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's video, we're talking about BGS. They have recently made some announcements, which is pretty exciting, and a few would you rathers. So again, it's just me, Scott, Phil, and Ty this week. Jeff and Chris are out, but it's great to see you all, and thanks for joining. So the very first topic is actually going to be about Beckett. BGS, Beckett Grading Services. It previously was number one or number two. It kind of went back and forth with PSA over the decades. I believe they were in 1995 or 1999. They came out. And they did a great job. Beckett's always been sought after, especially for modern. They were the first grading company to do subgrades. People loved that. Their slabs were thicker, more protective in a lot of people's eyes. But they kind of fell off during the whole COVID boom, right? They kind of stopped really communicating. They weren't hitting their turnaround times like a lot of grading companies. But either way, they are now, at least in regards to popularity of us sending them cards, number 4 behind PSA, SGC, even CGC. And even for sports cards, they're barely ahead of CGC. So basically, they are the number 4 grading company. You could say 3 or 4 between them and CGC in regards to popularity. But they are now announcing stuff. And one of the big announcements they made is that they are not changing their grading scale. So I want to ask you 2 questions, Ty and Phil. The first one is, do you think BGS is making the wrong choice by not changing their grading scale? And then do you think BGS can have a comeback story in the hobby? So the very first one, do you think them not changing their grading scale is good or bad for collectors? Ty, I'll let you go first.
I think they should change it. I'm going to go with the same thing that Jeff said, and we talked about this on our Cards on the Table on the CI channel. And I think that, personally, I think they should have bumped all of their 9.5s up to 10s. And they should have had 3 levels of 10. You cannot get rid of Black Label. You can't get rid of pristine. Yes, it's confusing if you have 3 10s, entirely confusing, but not more confusing than having 9.5 be basically what is a 10 in the rest of the hobby. So I think they should have a BGS 10 gem mint offered across to reslab them all for a cost or whatever, and then just go with what is the rest of the industry norm, BGS 10. And then you can have pristines. That's going to confuse some people. We know those are much lower, population than gem mints. Black Label's even more low population. But I think the hobby wants a 10. The hobby's used to a 10. And this idea of a 9.5 just confuses a lot of people. And then even just, I think maybe even subconsciously turns a lot of people off to wanting those cards. So if it were me, that's what I would have done. It's sort of like giving everybody who holds BGS slabs an upgrade without taking anything away. And that's what I would have done. And some people would have hated it, but I think most people would have been happy to have that quote unquote upgrade to their number.
I agree. People would have hated it in the moment, but I think more people would have used them in the long run. People might be fine with it now, but they're still not going to use them in the long run. So I think it was a bad choice too. But what do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think it's, do you cater towards the people that own the Beckett slabs today, the collectors of today, the customers of Beckett today, or do you cater towards an untapped market and some of the lost market share or market share you never actually received that went to some of the other grading companies? Do you try to attract some of those folks, or do you cause a logistical nightmare? If you were to change grading scales, that's what you would do. Is no matter what you do, whatever that conversion is, when CGC did it, they had very small pop report. So logistically, it was easy to roll out. But doing it with Beckett, whether you make all of the min gems and everything else cross to a 10, or just the true gems or just the true gem pluses, that would be tough. And that could hurt holders of BGS 10 pristine cards. And one of the nice things Beckett has going for it is it does have the most expensive condition right now with the Black Label and probably still the pristine.
Yeah,
hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
The margin has certainly narrowed quite a bit over the last few years, and it hasn't helped that they're giving out many more pristines and Black Labels. Now, in their defense, the Black Label rate has gone up largely because of the number of on-demand cards and also TCG. TCG cards are known to be easy grades. On-demand cards are going to be 20-point card stock. I've had a few in my hand, and I'm like, wow, these all look like Black Labels, but I'm not going to send them in because Beckett costs too much. So, I think at the end of the day, and this is the second part of your question, whether they do this or don't do it, it's not going to save their company, I don't think, unfortunately. And the same goes for something like subgrades. Subgrades are what makes Beckett unique at this point, since almost all the other grading companies, certainly all the big ones, have done away with them. But it's the differentiator, and it's what keeps a lot of people coming back. And unfortunately, I don't think it's scalable for them to provide that service, because I think it takes too much time in the grading process to be able to assign that level of granularity for cards where, face it, guys, like cards that are coming out of packs over the last 2 or 3 years, like for the most part, now I know Panini's a little different, but from the top standpoint, 90% of those, 85% of those at least, out of packs over the last 2 or 3 years, if they're worth sending in, they're going to get either a 10 or a 9, and then there's a 15% chance they get something lower. So why take all that time to assign little subgrades, and then you're doing like the top down and bottom up? And I don't think subgrades are, I know we weren't supposed to talk about that, but yeah, Beckett is effed. Beckett's effed.
I don't. So my issue with subgrades is they're just so inconsistent, right? If we sent the same card in 100 times to BGS, they might have the same grade more consistently than PSA, but those subgrades are going to change like crazy, like crazy. And honestly, sometimes their subgrade system, it can make a card, especially for cards with surface damage, overgraded at times, right? So if a card is a 7.5 surface, everything else is a 9 or a 10, then we're looking at an 8.5 when that card would have been a 7 at PSA or an 8 at best. And I don't know. It's just, I feel like I send cards, well, not anymore, but when I sent cards to BGS at times, it was always cards with everything was great, and then one of the subgrades was kind of beat up because it was easy to get the little bit of a bump because of it. And people could say, oh man, if I just crack this out, like outside of that one small thing, this card's in great condition, when in reality, it's just a 7 or an 8, right? So I really do think BGS, and when they announced the change where only like 10, 20% of their BGS 9.5 gem mints are now going to be gem mints, everything else is just a mint plus, I was pissed. Because a lot of my cards, even now, are still in BGS holders. I love their cases, and it's just coincidence that I have them in those holders. And it would have been so easy to make me happy, and I feel like you guys would have been more happy than what they have done, just to make everything gem mint. Say we believe our gem mint's the same as everybody else's, because they do. They just need to prove that to, especially to newer collectors who know a 10 on the other 3 big grading companies. So
I think there are still people who are pretty incredibly loyal to BGS, to Beckett, and they like using them. But here's the question I would ask if I had my business operations cap on: is we are kind of a sinking ship. Like, we've got a lot of money invested into our operations, and we're not meeting our economies of scale, not even close to it, presumably, or what they could be doing. Their numbers have been going down. So at what point do you have to stare down the barrel of your loyal clientele and customer base and say, but they're not going to keep us viable. They're not going to help us get to where we want to go as a company, back into the conversation, at least as the number 2 grading company. We don't want to altogether alienate or abandon them, but we're in a war for other customers too and trying to get them. So how do we find that sweet spot, and what kind of tough decisions do have to be made? Rip the Band-Aid off and do something different. Here's the scenario I could see. We've talked about this a million times. It's like Fanatics goes in with their penchant for buying financially struggling companies that are operationally struggling, scoops them up at a discount, and then comes in and makes some substantial changes, like having a huge markup cost to grade with subgrades, and a much more competitive low cost to grade with no subgrades, to try to just start encouraging volume. Because PSA is pulling all the levers right now. They bought, collectors bought SGC. Like, they pretty much call their own shot now. They call the shot of the whole scene. So I feel like they have to do something different, and there almost has to be like another change in ownership in the whole picture for them even to begin to compete. And if it really is like subgrades are neat, but they're also problematic and time consuming and more effort, you have to start changing the paradigm internally, even if it's going to upset some of your existing customers. And I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's a $5 increase to have subgrades, and then it's a $5 decrease on the service to get no subgrades, and you just start trying to nudge people in that direction. I also think personally that they need to have a slab change. The more and more that I hold Beckett slabs, the more they just feel sharp and big, and they take up too much space. And the labels are always falling off inside and rattling around. And I think they need to invest some changes into that and try to get a little more modern with their slab design to compete. Because I mean, I like CGC's the best personally, but then obviously we know they've had some challenges too.
BGS slabs, I actually don't mind the sharpness of them, but I do agree after having other company slabs like CGC, they are really great. They're ergonomic, they're great and clear. But my problem is with the printing of the labels. Every single freaking label is inconsistent from each other. It drives me nuts at this point. Like, it's how hard is it to print consistently on these labels? And I don't know. I agree. So I wish them the best. I've actually always been a BGS fan, and I still am. And I don't want them to fail, but I think they still should have made some more changes than they did. Actually, they didn't make any changes. They just disappeared for 2 years. Now they're back the exact same. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. They said there's more announcements coming, so let's cross our fingers and see if there's something good that happens.
Yeah, I will give the guy. I mean, you got another new guy stepping up and trying to save a sinking ship, honestly, and I wish him the best. And they do need to make some changes. One thing he emphasized, we'll see if it's true, was we asked and now we're trying to listen and we're trying to put our energy into the things that you've told us are most important. So now it's just a matter of action, right? And doing what you say. And I don't know. It seems like they've had a lot of issues internally. So I don't imagine this is an easy ship to get back in the right direction.
Yeah. It's about 4 years too late. And they have tweaked their cost structure a little bit between subgrades and non-subgrades, and they've made them close and they've made them far away. And I think realizing that if you make the subgrade option a lot more expensive, then they're just going to lose business. And it's going to be quite significant. So with Fanatics, I definitely see there's two sides of the argument. Like, does it make sense for Fanatics to buy the Beckett Grading Company or Beckett as a whole? It makes sense because grading is a lucrative business. It doesn't make sense because the time and effort involved of saving and repairing the Beckett brand, and that could take quite a lot, and it would take gutting of existing resources and finding some good ones that PSA doesn't already have their hands on, or CGC really. So yeah, I don't know. I've also heard that Beckett is very expensive and it would be very complicated to buy them. So
why are they expensive?
I don't know.
Just the legacy.
Too much goodwill, I don't know, attached to the name. I'm not sure.
They don't have very much going on, like, grading wise. They're behind everybody by a ton. And I don't know. I do hope they can do something, right? But the longer I'm preaching that, the more I think PSA is just going to run away with it. And they are. They're really doing a lot of great things in regards to innovation. And
yeah, regarding the label and PSA's innovations, I think we all would have agreed 5-6 years ago. Well, if you'd asked like 10 people in a room, which slabs you like better, Beckett or PSA, and everybody would say Beckett. Now I think it would be pretty split. And I think it's because a lot of the security features that PSA's added, the QR code, things like that, they go a long way, right? And you can tell that Beckett slabs haven't been modernized. And the QC, being able to see through the card, you want the slab, and people have realized this with CGC and some of the other more modernized, I'll call them like next gen holders with HDA and rare edition, etc. Like, it's nice to have a slab that actually shows off the card. With Beckett, you don't really get that. You get a cloudy looking card. And if you're trying to crack it, put some special sauce on the thing, then you won't know if it's a good candidate till after you rip it out half the time.
Yeah. Great point. All right. Well, I think that wraps us up with Beckett. Wish them the best. I'm excited to see what they have to announce. They want free consultation. Phil, Ty, and I are here ready to chat. So, all right. So our next topic, I have a would you rather. And this one to me is fun. So let me hurry and just get the correct tabs open, and I'll share my screen really quick. So this is all around Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll has had a disappointing start to the season. I mean, it's early, and he's not doing horrible. Had his first home run today. But I want to ask you, for $2,700, which of these cards would you rather have? And the reason I'm showing this is I think we'll talk about why. But first one, Dynasty RPA. Cool logo. It looks like the snake's face, but You're kind of missing the eye and like the really great stuff. $2,600 for this card. This was sold on auction. Or would you rather have a PSA 10 Topps Chrome Gold auto, a blue BGS 9 auto, Bowman Chrome autograph, and a black flagship rookie? That's the same price. Those added up is the same as that one Dynasty RPA. And I think we're at the point now where those Dynasty RPAs are like, they already kind of being overvalued. Like which of that grouping, those three or the Dynasty? What are you taking, Phil?
Show me the RPA again.
This is the RPA, has a face of the Diamondback. Or you can have a blue Bowman Chrome autograph, a Topps Chrome Gold PSA 10 autograph, and a flagship black rookie.
It's not close. I
Not
take
close.
the non-Dynasty 3 cards. Or
Ty,
is that
what
4
do you
cards? That's right. Yeah.
In this case, I know what you did here. You went out and you found 3 iconic parallels of good value. I'd take the stack in this case. Maybe surprisingly, I would take the stack. And knowing that Michael Harris 1 of 1 did 3,200, and the Carroll, which has, I don't know how many he has on the checklist, but it's more than 1 card on the number to 5.
There's 9 number to 5 cards, so there's 45 of them.
Not 45. Yeah, no, I'd definitely take the stack in this case. The patch is cooler here than it was on the Harris, but
Better auto.
Better auto.
Yeah, sick patch.
But I would definitely take the stack, if anything, just for the flexibility. I would like that in this case, and those are all good. Those are all good choices of cards to buy. So,
and these, I wasn't even trying to cherry pick either. Like this one, I was watching and I wanted to buy it, and then I didn't because I was trying to be smart and not buy stuff. And then this one I just found on auction, and this one I just looked up, and like they're $699, $550 accepted offers, so it's around $500. Are we seeing? We talk about Dynasty a lot, and I have no idea if that actually moves markets or anything. Right? You made a video on your Market Movers channel. Are we seeing these going to become overvalued at some point? Like, is there a line, or is this just the correct market for these cards?
Well, that whole term overvalued, undervalued is kind of subjective. Like it's the value is what people are willing to pay for it. If you mean by overvalued that they could spike too high and then kind of come back down, sure, maybe. Maybe. But I do think it'll be more of an organic growth on these. I think they're hot right now because the product just came out. But they're hotter now than they've ever been. Than ever when Dynasty has come out. Dynasty's hotter now than I think it's ever been. And there's prices breaking records for new rookie cards that we haven't ever seen on Dynasty cards. So I think it's probably going to settle in as a high-end product and as an alternative type of card from this category of parallels and, prospect cards. But I still like the stack on these. I think that's a good option.
Phil, any final thoughts?
No, but yeah, to Teapot's point, within like 30 days of any product's release, things are going to be a little bit hotter. So that in itself would give me a little bit of pause, but Teapot's saying that this is more than just temporary, and I think he's right. And even before the SCI pump, we saw a lot of strong momentum over the last couple of years. I think Teapot, you had noted that already.
Yeah.
So as part of your thesis. So that's a sick looking card though.
So I thought it was interesting little grouping. We're seeing some cards lose value, some gain, some sets. It could just be like sports cards, hype, right? It could be a little bit hyped up too much. Maybe this is the true market moving forward. But other than that, let us know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which grouping of cards would you have? The black, the Topps Chrome Gold, top PSA 10 autograph, and the blue BGS 9 prospect, or would you rather have that Dynasty RPA? Other than that, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in the next video.